So then, from the beginning, wow, it's not possible to do something with young artists from India. So all these questions that that's I have noticed that this is not just it's not a comment. It's just some of the things I have noticed.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Just as a point of continuation, I think we've been noticing certain ideas of market, but I want to expand that to stop only talking about economics, because people have brought up other markets, the education market, the magazine market, the market of audience, and so forth. And to bring it back again to that idea of subject and what Akiko was just saying about for whom and why are these things produced and how are they shared. And I'd like to put a little prohibition on the fact that we can't talk about economics for the next round, because we can't. But maybe let's talk a little bit about what efforts are being used to create schools, to create the subject of an artist, what an artist is in the context of those schools, and some debates here. Or if they're not, what they could or should be, and likewise spin into other aspects of media such as magazines, but also into audience. What kind of general education is there in the society outside of the artist and the art school and the art teacher, outside the artist and the art magazine, but to, say, the newspaper and the person at large, or say to movies and to people in the country. And maybe go ahead.
I'd just like to talk a little bit. You're talking about audience formation and systems of knowledge that are put out as instruments of introducing the arts. I actually wanted to just come back to what Akiko was saying and then maybe swim with the idea that you've thrown out. Akiko points out that why should there be a compulsory Indian-ness in Indian art? Of course there shouldn't be. Though India has battled very strongly with ideas of indigenism, and that's a very post-colonial situation. I think one of the big problems for Indian art has also been the curatorial framework put out by large museums in the last 2 or 3 years, ending with the Centre Pompidou show and perhaps beginning with some of the others. If you look at even the kind of titles that we have, Indian Summer, Indian Highway, Chalo India, The Empire Strikes Back, a very sort of neo-colonial, if you like. They fix us and they fix the notion of Indian-ness within the borders of nation. So if you're talking at them about education and knowledge around art, the global audiences are receiving it in this package where you can move from object to object, and in a certain sense the object is discrete, but then how you read it is important. Is context important, or is simply the context of national border adequate? So I think when I come back to the point of a rising Asia, is it illusionary? I don't think so. I think what is happening is that perhaps other kinds of systems of education or exchange of ideas and translation in art need to be, have been set into motion, which perhaps circumvent this kind of huge museum show, this magnum opus of India, and now that the Centre Pompidou has done this show, they're not going to touch it for the next 5 years. They're not going to touch India. What the Centre Pompidou did do was to use systems of traditional museum display, anthropology, ethnocentricity, etc. They're all brought in as pedagogical systems. Does it make a good show? No. It makes a terrible show. So these are questions of is that what you want to put out? I mean, is curatorial value and educational value essentially compatible? That's one. But I just want to quote one example to you, which I think is an interesting example, which circumvents this, and this is the West Heavens project between India and China, where a set of curators in China and a set of curators in India come back to the notion of India being the kingdom on the West, which is the West Heavens. And they have set up a dialogic space and a curatorial space of exchange and collaboration. And I think, and I've just collaborated in India, China, show myself. It's interesting because for the first time, the passageway through the West has been completely avoiding. And there is some of the grandeur of Ogakura Tenshin, Sun Yat-sen, and Rabindranath Tagore of the 1930s. But there is also a sense of being able to set up a philosophic and a cultural exchange which circumvents museum systems, which circumvents markets, and sets up a genuine exchange born of perhaps a memory of cultural pasts. I think that's valid. I think that's a valid curatorial position. So in that sense, I think the exhibitionary space and the systems that you're going to use are going to determine knowledge. It's not just pedagogy. It's for the lay user in France or Italy. How many pedagogical systems are you going to be able to set up for the rest of Asia? It's not going to happen. It's going to happen through interested curatorship. And I think other models need to be brought into play.
I think I'll take it back to what Adam said about audiences and what is the role, what are these connections that can be made between art and a larger public. In India, I think we have a very poor museum culture. Students are really not taken to museums except for a quick rush around the walls, where they're more interested in putting their fingerprints on the walls themselves than looking at anything. So there is an intense pride, on one hand there's an intense pride in our classical artistic heritage, which is in temples, in classical miniature paintings or tanjore works and so on. And there is also an engagement with a kind of popular culture that is also very visual in the Indian sense. But on the other hand, when it comes to entering a gallery or entering a museum space where the engagement has to be taken that much deeper, that doesn't happen. So it is in fact a very real situation. It is very difficult. This idea of developing a kind of a community awareness of art and engagement with art of all types. So, you know, even talking about curation at this platform, we are comfortable with it, we understand the term to a certain extent, but the moment you put it out there in the open to any kind of public that comes to Indian art spaces, they're confused. They have huge inhibitions. There is a complex identity that art has here, art that comes from galleries, that is. It's too complex to comprehend, and one cannot understand it, so it's better to avoid it. So how to bridge these gaps? You know, there have been movements, like in a place like Bangalore, they tried to do an exhibition within a mall, and they thought that would make some sort of interesting interaction between the art and the mall goers. But unfortunately, what happened was that all the galleries informed their customers, and the customers were given discounts, so they came and saw the work at the mall. So I did a short survey and spoke to people who were generally coming into the mall, and they said, oh yes, there's art here, but you know, we don't know anything about it. So that is a kind of very fundamental situation that we have in urban India, definitely in semi-urban and rural India. In rural India, at least, they have a direct engagement with tribal art forms or folk art forms and these things which are part of their everyday life. But is fine art a part of the everyday life of the general public? No, we just have, I think we have a very small audience, and to bridge this gap between the public and the artists and art, I don't think also that the magazines are really accessing that much. Because again, there is the idea of art-related writing being full of jargon or very complicated language, and everybody says, oh no, we cannot understand what Martha writes, or you know, whoever. So where does the public actually have an access? We did have recently a live art project in Bangalore again. Sorry, I'm talking about Bangalore because I'm from there. There were plenty of artists from abroad and from India who performed various pieces of their interest on the streets. But what happened was that the art community following the live art was making a group around these performers and engaging with it themselves. So it sort of cut off the public from actually accessing it, because the art community themselves were consuming what was happening, and it did not even allow the public to enter into that little tight, narrow space. And I think that we do it often. We do have a small, very small community, an art world in India, but I think we tend to make it tighter by sometimes not allowing for a kind of porosity, even misunderstandings, to allow for an engagement to happen. So the idea of the audience and directly coming in contact with artists and artists' work, it is very, it's a complex situation, and I think also that artists in their way have to be much more open. There have to be these things like studio visits, trips around to see how the process is, rather than only the end product. Because what we see in a gallery is always the end. But the process of an artist is also interesting, and I think that Indian public thrives on being able to see the process. So maybe, I don't know, something can be done about that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, first I will respond a little bit in few words to what Akiko said, that when they import Indian artworks, that they spend huge money on the insurance, and now I don't believe it's undervalued. I said Indian art was undervalued 10 years back, and there is hardly any art market in the world which has seen this kind of growth and natural growth from, say, X to 1000% of that amount, and in some cases 3000% of amount. So today it is not undervalued. It is little bit of at par with the maybe global art prices. Okay? So Akiko, that point was that I was talking about 10 years back. Now coming back, Adam mentioned one point that we should be talking in terms of education or something like that, educating the public, and you now are saying that we should take the students. In that, on that level also, if I say if I give some statistics, say 10 years back, in India there was one art magazine, only one art magazine 10 years back. Now there are 9 art magazines.
And it's this whole time, and in two different ways. At first, the idea of actually space in the literal sense. How does the room, the street, the juxtaposition, whatever, change the reading of the work? And that's something very interesting to talk about, and maybe we can get into as well. But also simultaneously the change of space, as in more related to systematically, where we've been discussing changing ideas of both characters again who are circling around the market, but also sort of ideas of representation in the space that a title gives to a work. And for example, I in particular, when I've done works, have intentionally given titles like that to make the primary purpose underneath the title itself, to address that idea.